It was supposed to be just another night. The city of Philadelphia hummed with life. Traffic lights blinking through mist, sirens echoing faintly in the distance, and street lamps stretching long shadows across the wet pavement. For 23-year-old Kada Scott, it was the end of a long shift at an assisted living home. She loved her job, taking care of people who needed an extra bit of kindness. That's just who she was. Gentle, radiant, the kind of person whose laughter made other people laugh too. She texted a friend before leaving work. Nothing unusual. No hint of fear. No goodbye that sounded final. But that message would be the last one she ever sent. When Kaya didn't show up the next morning, her family knew something was wrong. Kaya wasn't the type to just disappear. She had responsibilities, dreams, and a mother who she always checked in with every single day. Her mother's voice cracked as she told reporters later, "I just knew. I knew something wasn't right. My baby wouldn't do this." When officers arrived at the parking lot of Kaya's workplace, her car was still there, doors locked, neat and tidy like she always kept it. But her phone, her iPad, and her purse were gone. It looked like she had walked away, yet somehow never walked anywhere at all. Police retraced her last known steps. Security footage showed her clocking out around 10 p.m., wearing her scrubs, carrier bag, and then nothing. She vanished into darkness. Friends began calling, texting, leaving voicemails that would never be returned. Her social media went silent. Within 48 hours, a missing person report was filed. Flyers went across the city, her bright smile printed on paper that flapped in the October wind. Volunteers showed up, college students, church members, neighbors, all walking through fields, woods, and alleyways with flashlights in hand. Police searched nearby Aubrey Arboretum, a sprawling green space that looked peaceful in daylight but felt unnervingly endless at night. Nothing. No footprints. No trace of a struggle. Just emptiness. Weeks passed. Hope began to fade. Until someone, whose identity remains unknown, sent police a message that simply read, "Go back. She's there." Chills went down investigators' spines. The message didn't say where, but something about it felt urgent, like the person knew more than they should. Police decided to return to Ada Lewis Middle School, a wooded area they had already combed through before. This time, they looked deeper, moving brush and debris, until one detective spotted something strange, freshly disturbed soil, just behind the fence line. And then they found her, buried in a shallow grave, only partially concealed by leaves. Dental records confirmed it was Kada Scott. The world stopped for her family. Her mother collapsed. Her father stood motionless, hands trembling as he whispered, "We were too late." The autopsy revealed she had suffered trauma consistent with foul play, though investigators withheld exact details. What mattered was clear. This was no accident. Someone had taken Kaya's life. Detectives began reconstructing her final hours. Who did she see after work? Who might have lured her away? The name that kept surfacing was Keon King, a 21-year-old man who lived not far from Kaya's job. Witnesses said he had been around her workplace before, hanging around, watching her, trying to talk to her. But when police dug into his background, their stomachs dropped. Keon had a history. He'd been charged just months earlier with kidnapping and assaulting another woman. She had escaped, pressed charges, but later didn't show up in court. The case was dropped and Keon walked free. It was a mistake that would cost Kaya her life. As one officer later said off camera, if that case had gone through, she might still be here. Investigators pieced together a timeline. They discovered cell tower data showing Keon's phone near Kaya's workplace the night she disappeared. Then later that night, near Ada Lewis Middle School, the very location where her body was found, there was also a car, a black 2008 Hyundai Accent. Security footage caught it parked near the school around midnight on the night Kaya vanished. A week later, that same car turned up burned to frame in a junkyard, the license plates removed. Police believe it was used to move Kaya's body, and then destroyed to erase the evidence. Forensic tests confirmed traces of DNA that matched Kaya's inside the vehicle. It was enough to link Keon directly to her murder. Meanwhile, the internet had already done what the internet does best: dig. Old TikTok videos started resurfacing, showing Keon allegedly stalking women, peering through their windows, whispering threats. One woman posted a clip of him standing outside her home, saying she called police before. In her caption, she wrote, "I'm so glad you're behind bars. You can't hurt anyone else." But for Kaya, that warning came too late. Keon King was arrested and charged with kidnapping, stalking, arson, and evidence tampering. The district attorney called it an ongoing investigation, but the community knew what that meant. A murder charge was coming. Kaya's family faced cameras with trembling hands and broken voices. Her mother said, "I just want to know why. Why her?" There was no answer. Kaya's story, her laughter, her kindness, her future, all gone because of one man who never should have been free to begin with. And that's where the story truly begins. Not just with her disappearance, but with the cracks in the system that allowed a known predator to walk free. Because when justice fails once, it often doesn't stop there. Before his name ever made headlines, Keon King was just another face in the crowd. A young man from Philadelphia with a wide grin and an easy laugh. People who met him said he could charm you in minutes. He was the kind of guy who knew how to make eye contact, how to sound sincere, how to play nice. But behind that smile was something dark, something that had been festering for a long time. Keon had two sides. To the few who knew him casually, he was quiet, polite, maybe even shy. But to the women who crossed his path, he was something else entirely. A predator who didn't take no for an answer. When detectives began tracing his past, they found a disturbing pattern of obsession. Keon wasn't just the kind of man who liked control. He needed it. He followed women, messaged them repeatedly, showed up where he wasn't supposed to be. Police later uncovered that months before Kaya disappeared. Keon had been charged with kidnapping and assaulting another woman. That woman had managed to escape after what she described as a night of terror. She pressed charges, but when the case went to court, she didn't show up. Maybe she was afraid. Maybe she just wanted to forget. Either way, the case was dismissed. Keon walked free, and no one could have known what he'd do next. Kaya worked the late shift, often leaving the assisted living facility close to midnight. She'd sometimes stop for gas or grab a drink on the way home. Just small moments of normal life. That's how investigators believe Keon first noticed her. In that quiet window between work and home when the streets were almost empty, he started appearing around her job. Co-workers later recalled seeing a young man lingering in the parking lot, leaning against a car, scrolling on his phone. They didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe he was waiting for someone. But Keon wasn't waiting for anyone. He was watching. When detectives searched Keon's phone, they found chilling evidence of obsession. Searches like, how to make someone disappear, and can police track deleted text messages? There were screenshots of Kaya's social media, her photos, her location tags, her posts. He had even saved one of her selfies as his wallpaper. And then there were the messages. Hundreds of them. Unsent draft to numbers investigators believe belonged to Kaya. Messages he had written and deleted. "You can't ignore me forever. I know where you are." One detective later said it was like reading the diary of a ticking bomb. After the arrest, more women came forward. One said Keon used to follow her home from work. Another claimed he once banged on her apartment door, whispering to crack, "I just want to talk." And then there was the TikTok video that went viral. A terrified woman filmed herself inside her bedroom as a man's shadow appeared outside her window. You could hear her crying, whispering into the camera, "He's here again." That man, police later confirmed, was Keon King. At the time, no one knew his name. But after Kaya's story broke, the internet connected the dots. The comment sections filled with outrage. He was doing this for months and nobody stopped him? How many women has this guy terrorized? The truth was, more than anyone realized. Police believe that on the night of October 4th, Keon waited for Kaya to finish her shift. She clocked out around 10 p.m., walked toward her car, and at some point between the door and the driver's seat, he appeared. Investigators suspect he forced her into another vehicle, the black Hyundai Accent, and drove off. Cell tower records later placed his phone near her job at 10:23 p.m., and then near Ada Lewis Middle School just before midnight. That was the last digital trace of Kaya alive. Her family, unaware of the horror unfolding, was at home calling her phone over and over again. It rang once, then went to voicemail. Her mother left a message. "Kaya, please call me back. I'm worried, baby." That voicemail would never be heard by her daughter. 10 days later, a burned-out car was discovered at a junkyard in southwest Philly. Investigators almost dismissed it until they ran the VIN and realized it belonged to Keon King. Inside the melted frame, forensic teams found a single strand of hair, half charred but still testable. It was Kaya's. That car became the silent witness to her final moments. Police theorized that after the murder, Keon used the car to dump her body in the wooded area behind Ada Lewis Middle School. Then he set the car on fire, thinking fire could erase the truth. But fire can't destroy everything. DNA doesn't lie. For the next few days, Keon acted like nothing had happened. He went out with friends, posted memes, even liked photos on Instagram. To everyone else, he was his usual laid-back self. But detectives would later find scratches on his hands, fresh, deep, defensive wounds. When they asked him about them, he said he'd been working on his car. They didn't buy it. The morning officers came for him. Keon didn't run. He stood in the doorway of his apartment, smirking, as police read him his rights. Inside his apartment, investigators found Kaya's earrings, a woman's hair tie, and a set of work keys from her job. He didn't say a word, but when one detective asked, "Why did you do it?" he looked up and said, "You can't prove anything." That silence, that smug calm, was more chilling than any confession. When the news broke, Philadelphia exploded in outrage. Women across the city shared their own experiences of being followed, harassed, ignored when they asked for help. The headline wasn't just "young woman murdered." It was "the system failed her." How could someone with a violent history, someone already accused of kidnapping, still be free? Prosecutors defended their earlier decision, saying the prior victim refused to testify. But that did little to comfort anyone. The mayor called it a preventable tragedy. And on social media, a movement began, women posting with the hashtag Justice for Kaya, demanding change, demanding accountability. Because everyone could see the pattern now. And it was terrifying. By the time Keon sat in an interrogation room, the world already knew who he was. Detectives played back the TikTok videos, the messages, the evidence. He didn't blink. He didn't deny it. He just stared. It was almost as if he was proud. To this day, no one fully understands what was going through his mind, whether it was obsession, rage, or something darker. But one thing was clear. Kaya's story had exposed something much bigger than one killer. It had revealed how often women's warnings go unheard until it's too late. The morning after Kaya's disappearance, the city felt different. The air was heavy. Her family knew something was wrong. That kind of deep, gut-level knowing that doesn't wait for proof. Her mother, Teresa, couldn't sit still. She called hospitals, police precincts, friends, co-workers. Everyone said the same thing. We haven't seen her. When the first missing person poster went up, Philadelphia started paying attention. It was impossible to miss her smile. Soft, kind, that's her genuine warmth that made people stop and look twice. The photo spread quickly online, and soon her name was everywhere. Have you seen Kaya? Friends, volunteers, and strangers showed up with flashlights and gloves, combing through parks and abandoned lots. Churches opened their doors for community vigils. Mothers who didn't even know Kaya came out, holding candles, whispering prayers. And then, a week later, police made the announcement no one wanted to hear. A body had been found. The air left the room. Teresa fell to her knees before the officer could even say her daughter's name. Kaya had been found behind Ada Lewis Middle School, barely recognizable, hidden under branches and leaves. The coroner later said she had been there for days. The crime scene was quiet. Investigators moved slowly, collecting every fragment, every clue. Tire marks, a strand of hair, the burned debris from the car not far away. One officer said it felt like the woods themselves were holding their breath. Detectives traced everything back to one man, Keon King. His phone, his car, his fingerprints, all leading straight to him. When they confronted him again, this time with the evidence laid out in front of him, Keon didn't react. He just leaned back in the chair, eyes cold. "You think you got it all figured out?" "We've got enough," the detective replied. The silence that followed was suffocating. Prosecutors move fast. They charge him with murder, kidnapping, arson, and abuse of a corpse. The community demanded justice. And for once, the system seemed to move with the urgency it should have shown months earlier. At the arraignment, Teresa stood in the front row, clutching a photo of her daughter. When the judge asked Keon if he understood the charges, he smirked. Teresa shouted, "Look at me!" And for a split second, his eyes flicked toward her, empty, unfeeling. Reporters captured that moment, and it became the face of the case. A grieving mother staring at the man accused of taking her child. Public outrage turned into action. Petitions flooded City Hall, demanding changes in how prior assault cases were handled. Activists called for stronger protective measures for victims and mandatory follow-ups on dismissed assault charges. Kaya's story had become a catalyst, a voice for every woman who had been ignored, dismissed, or left unprotected. Meanwhile, the investigation continued to unravel more details. Surveillance footage showed Keon buying lighter fluid the night Kaya disappeared. His internet searches grew darker. How to get rid of DNA evidence? How long does it take for a body to decompose? Every new piece of evidence painted a clearer picture of premeditation. But what truly broke everyone's heart was what investigators found on Kaya's phone. Unsent messages. One draft said, "Mom, something feels wrong." Another, time-stamped minutes before her phone went dark. "I think someone's following me." Those words haunted everyone. If someone had seen, if someone had answered, maybe she'd still be alive. As the trial approached, the courtroom filled every day. Journalists, advocates, survivors, all waiting for justice. When the prosecution showed the burned remains of Keon's car and the evidence of Kaya's DNA inside it, the room went silent. The defense tried to claim there wasn't enough physical evidence to prove intent, but the jury wasn't buying it. They had seen too much, heard too much. The final nail came when a woman testified that Keon had tried to lure her into his car just 2 weeks before Kaya vanished. She recognized his voice instantly. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 6 hours. The verdict, guilty on all counts. When the judge read it aloud, Teresa sobbed, not from victory, but from the weight of it all. Justice, yes, but no peace. Keon showed no emotion, no tears, no anger, just silence. As officers led him away, he glanced toward the gallery, eyes locking once more with Kaya's mother. She whispered, "You didn't win." And maybe, in a small way, she was right. Because even though Kaya's life was stolen, her story had ignited something powerful. The city began new safety programs. Lawmakers introduced the Kada Scott Act, designed to ensure cases of stalking and harassment could never again be dismissed so easily. Her name became a symbol of change, of how love and anger can turn tragedy into movement. Teresa said later in an interview, "I don't want anyone to say rest in peace to my daughter. I want them to fight in her name." That fight still continues. If you felt Kaya's story touch your heart, please take a second to subscribe, share, or even just leave a comment below. Stories like this matter, and keeping them alive helps keep others safe. Let's build a community that stands for truth, justice, and awareness, together. You'd think that when the verdict was read, it would bring peace. But for Kaya's family, it only deepened the quiet. The courtroom emptied. Reporters packed up, and the headlines moved on to the next tragedy. But the echo of Kaya's laughter, her voice on old videos, her perfume on her pillow, those things stayed. They haunted her mother, her sister, her friends. Teresa still set a place for her at the table sometimes, unconsciously. The chair sat empty, but it was impossible not to look at it. "It feels wrong to eat without her," she told a reporter once. After the trial, the city held a candlelight walk in Kaya's honor. Hundreds came, neighbors, teachers, co-workers, strangers who only knew her through a screen. They carried candles and wore shirts that said, "Her name is Kaya." Someone played her favorite song on a small speaker. The crowd sang softly through tears. And when Teresa stepped forward to speak, her hands trembled around the microphone. "I don't want her story to end in that courtroom," she said. "Because if it ends there, it means we didn't learn anything." Those words stuck. People began writing to city officials, asking for reform. Local colleges invited domestic violence advocates to speak on campus. Neighborhood watch groups formed new safety hotlines. The ripple effect of one girl's story started to change a city that had looked away too many times. Detective Marquez, one of the lead investigators, said it changed him too. He'd seen so many cases like this. Women disappearing, their cries for help buried under paperwork. But something about Kaya's case stayed with him. She wasn't invisible, he said quietly. She just needed someone to see her sooner. He keeps her photo on his desk to this day. Meanwhile, Keon's name faded into shadows of prison records. Just another inmate number. There were no visitors, no letters, no one asking about him. His silence now was all he had left. And still online, the community refused to let Kaya's name disappear. People shared her story across platforms, not as a ghost story, but as a call to awareness. Videos of her smiling, working, just living. They reminded everyone she wasn't just a victim. She was a whole person who loved, laughed, and dreamed. Every October 4th, the day she went missing, her family holds what they call Kaya's Day. They gather in the park she loved, release purple balloons, and share food with the community. There's always laughter, even in the tears, because that's how she'd want it. Sometimes, her friends swear they can still feel her presence. The way the wind moves through the trees, the warmth that comes when they tell her stories. Maybe that's memory. Maybe that's something more. What's certain is that Kaya's story didn't end in tragedy. It became a mirror, forcing people to see what's broken in a system that promises protection, but too often delivers silence. It's strange how pain can plant seeds. Out of loss, something begins to grow, awareness, empathy, change. And those who knew her cling to that thought, because otherwise, the grief would be unbearable. When Teresa was asked once if forgiveness was possible, she paused for a long time before answering. "No," she said softly, "but I can build something better out of what's left." Months passed. Seasons changed. The leaves turned. The snow came and melted, and still, people whispered Kaya's name. Her story refused to fade. It lingered in the quiet corners of Philadelphia, in classrooms, on bus stops, in conversations between mothers and daughters. Teachers began using her story as a lesson, not about fear, but about awareness. If you ever feel unsafe, they'd tell their students, don't ignore that feeling. Speak up. Tell someone. Because that's what everyone wished Kaya had been able to do. Not because she didn't try, but because she was unheard. Teresa found herself visiting schools, churches, even shelters, sharing her daughter's story. She didn't speak with anger anymore. She spoke with fire. If my pain can save one life, she'd say, then Kaya didn't die for nothing. She carried that strength like armor. Some days it weighed her down, but other days it lifted her. Behind the scenes, the city quietly began to change. Police departments started reevaluating their response times to stalking and harassment reports. Victim advocates were added to precincts. Funding was granted for new safety programs. None of that brought Kaya back, but it meant something. It meant her name had weight. People online still shared her photos, her quotes, her smile. She became more than a face in a file. She became a symbol, someone ordinary, whose story made extraordinary change. And that's the heartbreaking beauty of it, isn't it? Sometimes it takes one voice being silenced for the world to start listening. At the memorial garden built in her honor, Teresa planted a young oak tree. She said she wanted something that would outlive her, something that could grow tall and strong, like her daughter would have. Every spring it blossoms. People stop by, leave flowers, letters, small notes that say things like, I left because of you, or I reported at this time. Each message a testament that Kaya's story is still saving lives. Detective Marquez visits sometimes too. He doesn't wear his badge when he goes. He just stands there quietly, looking at the plaque that reads, Her strength became our voice. There's a peace in that garden that words can't quite touch, the kind of peace that feels earned. And maybe that's what justice really is. Not revenge, not punishment, but remembrance. Keeping someone's name alive so they don't vanish twice. Once in body and again in memory. Kaya's story began with fear, but it ends with light. A light that keeps growing, spreading, reminding us that awareness saves lives, that empathy changes laws, and that silence is never protection. So if you've been watching this far, take a breath. Let this story sit with you. Let it move you. Because the next time you see someone walking alone at night, or hear someone say they're scared, or notice something that feels off, maybe you'll remember Kaya. And maybe that memory will be the thing that makes you act. Because that's how we keep her alive. If Kaya's story has touched your heart, help us keep her light burning. Like, share, comment, or even just tell someone what you learned here today. Every story shared keeps her voice alive. Every view helps awareness grow. Let's build this channel together. A space where true stories aren't just told, but remembered. Because remembrance is where change begins.